Hello, David Clarke here from DVC Training, and today I'm going to look at the latest updates that we've got for Topaz Video AI, or Topaz Video as it's now called. Been a lot of interesting things happening recently, especially as we've just had IBC in Amsterdam. There's some interesting updates for things like Edius, but I'll do videos about them when they come out. Right now I want to look at Topaz because there's been quite a lot of changes since my last video. So as usual, I started out with the intention of making this just a quick video talking about the new features of Starlight, and when I've come to edit it, there's an awful lot of it. Hopefully the information is very useful to you, but it does cover some stuff that I've previously covered for people who are just seeing this Topaz stuff for the first time. So I do go through some of the basics of how to use Topaz in it. In the description below, I'll have different chapter points so you can jump to relevant bits if you want to just skip on slightly. Biggest change is how much it costs. When I first started using Topaz, it cost me about £200, and then I could choose to update or not update every year as things went along. Now, I was updating every year because they kept updating the models, which was improving my upscaling. Now they've changed that. Now you can only get it on subscription. Just like Adobe, it's gone to a subscription model, and if you stop paying for it, it'll stop working. Now, as somebody who had bought it in the first place, I can always go back to the version that I got before they went onto subscription. So I can stop paying for it and I'll have a version. But if you haven't used Topaz before and you want to get into it, you're now going to have to sign up to it and pay for it monthly. So as you can see, there are 3 different versions now. You've got the personal version, a pro version, and then the studio version. So the personal version effectively does what it's been doing for ages. It has all the same models, but it doesn't have this thing called Starlight. Now, in my last video, I talked about this new thing, Starlight, that they had added to Topaz and how it was incredibly good. Takes a long time, but actually does really, really good results. The personal version doesn't have that. You can use it on the cloud, but then you have to pay to actually get them to do it for you on the cloud. So the personal version doesn't have Starlight. They've also introduced a new model of Starlight called Starlight Sharp. So I'm going to talk about these models and whether they're worth it or not. But you can have the personal version without them. It still has all the other models, so things I've yet raved about before, like Iris and Proteus. These ones are all still there, it's just these ones aren't. Then you've got the Pro version, which has got the 2 Starlight models, and you can use them locally. So if it's in the cloud, it means you send it up to them, and then you pay them for every second of video that they actually work for you. So being in the cloud means you can't really use it without paying some more dosh. If it's local, it's downloaded into your machine, and it's done on your graphics card. So that means you can do it as much as you like without paying any more money. And because they're doing a subscription and you're paying for it monthly, you can either pay for 1 month, so this is the monthly billing thing where you're going to pay either $33 or $67. If I untick this save with annual commitment, this suddenly goes up to $59 for just having 1 month on its own. Or you can pay the whole thing at once and it gets a bit cheaper effectively monthly, but really the prices have gone up quite a bit. The other option you have here is this Topaz Studio. Now, Topaz Studio gives you the personal version of Topaz Video, plus access to all the other apps. So Topaz Photo, which is great for upscaling photos, and then Bloom and Astra, which are things for tarting up images in different ways. So this would give you everything that they do, obviously costs you a bit more money, and it gets you the personal version of Topaz Video. Now, you may or may not agree with subscription, you may or may not agree with the prices. Truth is, this is what it's doing. We have to live with it. Is it worth the money? That's really what I want to concentrate on. What are the results like? First of all, I've used lots of different AI upscaling programs, and I haven't found anything that does as good as a job as Topaz Video. It does by far for me the best upscaling. Now, of course, this is a thing that quite easily change. Adobe have announced that they're going to be putting their own AI upscaling into their stuff. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't. But basically at the moment, Topaz, for me, does far better quality than anything else. And sometimes it's a bit like magic. So I went looking for some of the crappiest shots that I've got to see what Topaz would do it. So let's take this shot, for example. This was taken many, many years ago. It's a low resolution shot. It's pretty awful. If I play it, you can see it's kids going around a merry-go-round. But it's a really, really atrocious picture. Well, I put this through Starlight, and this is the result. Now look at that compared to that. It's not a perfect image by any stretch of the imagination, but way, way different to that. It's quite staggering to me that it can turn that into that. Take this other shot of me, and if you look at it, you can see the size is 320 by 240, done in MPEG 2. Pretty awful looking picture. And if I run that through Starlight, it comes out like this. I mean, it does an amazing job of improving really low quality stuff. I've done some really good stuff with some cinefilm. Unfortunately, I can't use any of the cinefilm because it shows family members and all sorts of people that I haven't got the permission to actually show on YouTube. But it's taken some really fuzzy, old-fashioned 8mm cinefilm and it's upscaled it and made it look really nice and really usable. Like all AI stuff, sometimes it makes up the things wrong. Sometimes it can make faces not look exactly like the original people. But when you're working with something like that, it's really staggering how well it can do at improving stuff. Now, the model I use for that is Starlight. And Starlight, like I said, is the thing that's in the Pro version. Without Starlight, you've got all these other models. So this is the latest interface. This is what we call Topaz Video. So I was before talking about Topaz Video AI. That's the thing where you could buy it and then keep it forever. That they've stopped developing. They have said they're just going to do maintenance upgrades, so yeah, hopefully it'll work on Windows 12, but they're not putting any more effort into developing models for that. It's all going to go into their new version, which is now called Topaz Video. Topaz Video is the one that you can rent. Now, at the moment, what Topaz Video does is pretty much the same as what Topaz Video AI did, but obviously Topaz Video is going to get all the nice new stuff. As you can see from my little Pro up here, I happen to have the Pro version as well. So I do have these two extra fancy models called Starlight. If you bought Topaz Video AI and you got it before they went rental, you will actually have Starlight in there as an option. So if you did have an active license at the point when they went over to rental, your permanent thing will always have Starlight in it. It won't have this other thing, Starlight Sharp. But anyway, if we ignore those, what else can you do? The interface is pretty similar to what I've shown you in previous videos. Obviously you have a big window here where you can get a preview of what you're about to do, and you've got a film strip of the whole thing down the bottom here. And then over on this side, you've got all the different settings that you use. So I've got a bunch of presets, and I can either show the built-in presets or any that I've made up myself, or I can just close it down so it doesn't take up too much space. And then I've got all the different types of optimization they can do. So enhancement is the main one that I use. This is where you take the video, you put some settings in, and then you decide how big it's going to come out and what kind of parameters you use on it. They've got lots of different models, so the same kind of models as we've had before. Proteus, Iris, Nix, which is a specific one for denoising, Rhea, it's another upscaling one, Artemis, Gia, and Thea. All these are different models, and my favourites have always been Iris and Proteus. Now, Starlight is the fancy new thing that you get if you have the Pro version. Once you've chosen Starlight, you do have two different variations. So there's Starlight and Starlight Sharp. Starlight Sharp is particularly meant to be for video like this, particularly for awful video. Although in my tests, sometimes I found actually Starlight Sharp's done a better job on good quality video than Starlight has. And with all these things, it's a little bit of try it out and see what it comes up with and then use those settings. Now for the moment, I'm just going to look at the other models. So particularly, I would always go for Iris. I choose the size I want, so obviously this is starting out really small. Let's upscale it to at least 1280, so it's getting a bit bigger. The bigger you upscale it, the longer it's going to take, but I'm just going to pop to that one. And then you come down here and you fiddle with these parameters, and these parameters again are fairly similar to what you've had before. So the first one is whether you recover any detail. The idea is that if you AI it, it might clean it up too much, so it's quite nice to put back in some of the original crapness to try and make it look less AI-y. Personally, I turn that off. There's a focus fix thing which is designed to try and take the image here and then refocus it. I've had variable results with that, so I tend not to use that most of the time. Mostly what I do is I come down here and I choose whether it's a low quality or medium quality input. This, I'm going to choose low quality and see what happens. And I'm going to come down here to the advanced tuning and take it off automatic, put it onto manual. I'm going to click the estimate button so it gives me a quick idea of what it thinks it should do. And then I'm just going to fiddle with some of the sliders. I tend to shove the improved detail up an awful lot. And if it's noisy, I'll tend to put that up a lot. The fixed compression, I do tend to turn off most of the time because most of my problems I find in my videos aren't to do with the way it's made up. You know, compression is how the video is made up. And if something is compressed badly, you get all sorts of crap, which actually is what we're seeing here. All these extra lines, all this kind of stuff, all these blocks. This is caused by the fact that this has been compressed way too much. So I'm going to try whacking that up and see what happens. And then what I'm going to do is do a quick preview. So I click the preview button and it downloads some models, processes it, and then I can see about a second's worth of it. And that actually isn't bad. Now this is not using the fancy model that I showed you earlier. This is just using Iris, which up to now has been my favorite model. To be honest, that's not too bad. Okay, yeah, these don't look like people. The detail here isn't anything like I would have got even with a standard DV piece of footage, but it is an awful lot better than the original. And right now I'm trying to take this piece of video and make it into something usable. I've got different ways of previewing it. So at the moment I'm just seeing the whole thing, but I can click on this and it will give me a split view and I can move backwards and forwards between them. So you can get a much better idea there of how much it's improved it. Or you can do a side-by-side view. I can change the percentage. So at the moment it's trying to fit the whole thing, but let me put it at 100%. So I can see it at the actual size that it's going to be produced. Now what I can do is fiddle with these settings. So let's take the fixed compression down, for example, and just put these back to about 0. Take off the reduced noise, and let's do another quick preview of that. Different variation on the same thing. But this is where then I start to use these different tabs up here. So at the moment I've got the original on one side, and I've got Untitled, which is the one that I've upscaled. This is the one where I put all these parameters in. Suppose I want to save that, but then I want to try some different settings. Simplest thing to do is to right click on it and say duplicate, and it gives you two tabs which have got the same setting. And I'm going to take that and dump it over here. Make sure it's selected. I've got my blue line over it, and I'll change something. Let's put that to medium quality and see what that preview does. Now you might see down here on the timeline I've suddenly got two separate lines. Now that one represents the preview I've made over here, and this one represents the preview I've made over there. And now you can see the difference in using medium quality or low quality. In this case, quite clearly, medium quality is blooming awful. Let's go back to low quality. Let's try turning that down, and maybe let's turn the fixed compression all the way up. And again, do a quick preview. Yep, this one's sort of generated more fake data than that one. But this way, you see, you can get an idea of two different variations and compare them to each other. And I can pop back to the original and see what the original was like. See this variation compared to this one. And then when I'm happy with it, I'll just click the export button and export it. And if I really like the look, I say, yeah, I like these settings. I want to save that so I can use it in the future. You can right click on the tab up here, say save as a preset, and give it a preset. These names can't be that big. It says up to 20 characters. Bosh, I've now created a preset which I can use in the future. I mean, that's still a bit awful, and I did get a better result using Starlight, but still, that's better than that. How about if I try and use one of the other models? Let's see what happens if I use Proteus. Let's just try the same settings, do again a quick preview. Oh, well, Proteus might actually be doing a better job. Or I could try one of the other models. Using this way, you can try these things out and then decide on the settings you like the best. Now I've been previewing it at 1 second. I can click on this little thing here and choose to do 5 frames, because obviously the lower the amount of preview the better. Or if I wanted to see it moving, I could say do 5 seconds. Click on that, and now it'll make up 5 seconds preview of both of these. And I can see what they are like moving. Of course, doing a 5-second preview takes longer. I think out of those two, I think I probably still prefer this one. But again, both considerably better than the original. Now I have started with a mega crap shot here, so I'm going to have a look at some other shots a bit later on. I started with this because I also wanted to show you how it comes out with Starlight. But before I do that, a couple of other quick things about the interface. Obviously, if I want to export it, what I do is I click on this button. It asks me where to stick it, and it asks me what settings I want to use. Or I just click on this button and it pops it into a queue. And the one that go into the queue will be the one that's got the blue line over it. So if I go and look at the queue, you can see, yep, it's doing it. It's doing it in Iris because it's in the name there. And yep, it's now exported that. It's a very small clip and I'm not upscaling it much. But yeah, it's just exported that. That will just use whatever the current settings are. That one lets you specify where it go and what the settings are. And if you use that, it will go directly next to the original clip. Now you can specify a different output directory, either by going there and choosing it, or you can pop up into the preferences here under default settings. You can go to export folder, and here you can choose another directory. So it has a little full stop in there, which means go next to the original, but you can change it to something else, and then from that point on, all of your exports will go into another directory. But again, that's just quickly popping over the interface, which I have talked about before. One of the changes they've got is this thing down here, frame preview. So I don't know, let's go to this and let me try going up to a bigger file. Let's go up to an HD file. Now, as I've changed something about this setting, it's now gone back to the original. I've got to do a quick preview again to be able to see what it looks like, but I could just tick that box. And if I tick that box, what it does is as soon as you make a change over here, it updates one frame. It doesn't do 5 seconds, it just updates one frame. You know, I can come to this one here. Let's see what happens if I go up to HD for that one. Again, pop one frame of that done. I quite like that because you can get to see a frame without even having to wait to see this. Now, you want to see more than one frame, you've got to do a preview. Just on its own, you can just change something and see the results here. If I wanted to say, well, what's it like not using Proteus? What happens if I use Rhea? That's what Rhea looks like, which isn't bad, actually. If I want to see what Artemis looks like or Gaia looks like, again, you can do that, and this frame preview will give you the preview there. That looks flipping awful, Gaia. I used to like Gaia, just things got better. That one, no, not so good. Thea, nope, epic fail. I just still think out of these ones, Iris does the best job. And again, not perfect, but it just does the best job. But like I said, the reason I chose this really, really awful shot to start off with was to try and show you one of the reasons why you might consider going for the Pro version and Starlight. Because if I go to Enhancement and I choose Starlight, for a start, this doesn't work anymore. The thing about Starlight is it uses a fancy way of doing things called diffusion, and diffusion takes a flipping awful long time. It'll go better if you have a good graphics card, and in this system I've got a 4060 Ti with 16 gigabytes of RAM, so it's a pretty good graphics card. It's about 400 quid. Pretty good graphics card. If you were to put in a 5070, 5080, 5090, they will do it faster, but they will all be slow. That's because this way of upscaling is slow. So for a start, the frame preview doesn't work with Starlight. Then you've got two variations. You've got your Starlight and you've got your Starlight Sharp. Starlight Sharp, when they introduced it, was meant to be something that worked on really, really low quality videos. So I'll do this and show you the result out of both. But the thing I showed you in the first place, that is using Starlight. And that is considerably better than I was getting using Iris. And that's the point of it. And I wish I could show you some of the Cinefilm stuff that I've done with it, or some of my other low-res stuff. I mean, all of my DV stuff that I am upscaling at the moment. Iris does a very good job. Starlight is better. Now, Starlight is really noticeable if you're using very, very awful footage in the first place, like this. But even on like my DV footage, I find that if I use Starlight on it, I just get a nicer looking shot. You know, I don't get so much of the odd artifacts and things that you can sometimes get when you're really doing a lot of upscaling. And actually, I find that what I do is I put it through Starlight, and then after I've got the Starlight thing, I'll then put it through an Iris pass as well to get the better results out of it. I think that works very well, which means I actually process it twice. Now, to use Starlight, literally I choose it and then I choose the size. Lots of different sizes here, and in some variations they have only had specific sizes here, and that's because this only works in specific sizes. In the version that I've got at the moment, which is 1.01, I think these numbers are misleading, because if I chose 1920 by 1080, I don't think it'll come out at 1920 by 1080. In this case, I'm just going to go for the 4 times upscale, which is the same thing I did when I did it with Iris. I've got it set to do a ProRes file, and I'm going to click the button, and it sends it to the export queue. Let's have a look at the export queue, and here you can see, right, this one, that's the same video with Iris, the same size. Starlight Mini is, taking a bit of time to start. This, as it says, took 10 seconds. I hadn't finished a sentence before it had finished it. This will give me an estimate of how long in a minute, and then I'll have to wait for it to finish. And this is one of the things about Starlight. It does really, really good results, but it takes a long time. Now, how long it takes depends on what your original stuff is. Like if I started with an HD clip and I was upscaling it, it would take longer than starting with something that's 320 by 240, for example. If I took this 320 by 240 and tried to upscale it to 4K, it'll take longer than going up to 1280 by 960. But this is still going to take a bit of time. It took a bit of time to get going. I mean, a lot of times when I've sat here and looked at it, I'm thinking, is this actually working? It's taking an awful long time to get going, and then suddenly it gets going. And as you can see, it's estimating about 5 minutes to get it done. So that's 5 minutes as opposed to 10 seconds. And this is 5 minutes on a very nice graphics card. Not the most expensive graphics card you can get. You can easily spend 2,000 on one if you want to. But it is making it work really, really hard. As you can see, 100% processing power on that. It's using pretty much all of my memory. It's using about 12 gig of memory. And this is one of the things that if you go to a bigger size, it wants to use more than 12 gig. And I've only got 16 gig on the card. So if it goes over the 16 gig, it starts sharing the memory with the rest of the computer's memory, and that's when it really, really slows down. That's why if I wanted to pop this up to 4K, it would probably take quite a lot of time. Oh, it's gone up to 6 minutes now. Once that's finished, I will have that file that I showed you earlier. Now, I've already done it, so I'm going to cancel out that because I've already shown it to you. Now, Starlight Sharp is, again, same kind of thing as Starlight, but it's meant to be designed for really naff pictures. I haven't done this one yet, so I'm very interested to see what the results look like from my really, really naff picture. Now I'm getting a different list of sizes, so I'm just going to go to HD, and then I'm going to click the export button and see what happens. Now, like Starlight, it'll take time to load the model, and then like Starlight, it will also take a long time to actually do the processing. Now, whilst that's going, I'm going to go and load up another piece of video to process. That's a nice thing. You can actually do stuff with this program whilst it's processing. So I'm just going to close this little X to shut down the export tab, go back to sources, and I'm going to load another bit of video. Now here I have got a piece of random home video. It's pretty naff quality. It's all done in 8mm. Again, I'm just trying to go with rubbish quality footage here to give you an idea of what it looks like. Now again, I could do the same kind of enhancement as I did before. So I could do Iris, and then I could do Starlight and Starlight Sharp. And what I'm going to do with this is I am going to process this piece of video, and then I'll show you the results from the 3 different variations. So it's going to cost you a lot more money to get Starlight, but the question you've got to decide for yourself is it worth it? I think it is, because I think I want the best results possible, and it's giving me the best results I can possibly get. But the downside is it costs you more for the program, and it also costs you more in encoding time. It's the sort of thing where you might even think, you know what, I'm going to get a second computer and sit it in the corner and have that do all my encoding so I can get on with work with my main machine. That's what I've got. This is not my main machine that I'm using here. I put the best graphics card that I've got into a 9th generation processor system with 32 gig of RAM, and I use that to process all my stuff. I try and process it on SSDs because it seems to go a bit faster if you use SSDs, but I have done it off regular drives as well. But mainly it's the graphics card which is the most important thing. And that's why I took my best graphics card and put it into my not best machine, because that just lives there doing stuff like Topaz. With the speed this is going, if I want to take, say, a half an hour video and then I want to upscale it to something HD-ish, it's going to take me a day or so. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but it does give me the best results. So I will process these and I'll do you a quick summary of what the results look like so you can try and judge for yourself. So here I am in Resolve. I put them on the timeline on an HD project so we can just have a quick look at them. Now this is obviously the original, which is absolutely appalling. This is what happens if I put Iris on it. So immediately a lot better, still not really recognizable as people, but it's cleaned it up an awful lot. And then this is Starlight. And as you can see there, Starlight definitely is better. Still a bit blobby, but we are starting with something that's really quite horrible. Just out of interest, Resolve Studio does have its own AI upscaling, so I thought I'd see what that looks like, and that's this one here. This is the result of scaling in Resolve. I rendered it out because it doesn't play back properly otherwise, but obviously Topaz does a better job than Resolve, even if you're just using Iris, but it's better still if you use Starlight. If I just do a quick side by side, and yes, you can see on the left hand side I've got Starlight, and on the right hand side Iris. If I just stop it for a sec, just look at that still there. You can see there's actually a huge amount of difference, because these are people shapes but with odd things inside them. I don't even know if that's a head. This looks a lot more like a head. Again, starting with a really bad thing, but you can see Starlight is much better at recreating things. Now normally I go a step further than that, and I would take Starlight and add some processing. I'd bring the result back into the program and I'd run it through a second time, and I personally find I get best results just sticking a bit of Iris on there. I like Iris because it tends to put in a lot of subtle details. Some of the others may sometimes make them look a bit plasticky. This gives you a bit more texture on the faces and in various places. But again, it's a personal preference. That's why you've got to try these things out. Have a look up here and see whether you agree. Now, this is where I might say, let's go up to HD with it. Now, I've done a first pass, which has got it fairly clean. And then I'll pop this in here, put on the improved detail, and then I'll do a quick preview to see what it looks like. Now, I'm still exporting this thing using Starlight Sharp, but I've got this frame preview on, so it actually gives me a preview of that whilst I'm Starlight Sharping. And there you can see that just adding a bit of iris on there has actually added in quite a lot of details. Hasn't done any good for the guy's face, but there's actually quite a lot of detail there that's been added in on the horse, quite a lot of extra detail there that's been added in on the rest of the merry-go-round. Maybe too much. Maybe I need to tone it down a little bit. Obviously, takes longer. Because the other thing's processing, I've chosen my settings. I clicked on the export button. It's added it into the queue. And now once that one's done, it'll do that one. Now I do use that an awful lot. I will set something going and then I'll load up some more clips and then I'll keep adding them to the queue and then I'll let it go on with it, typically overnight. So here I've got the Starlight, which I've processed a little bit afterwards with Iris. And here I've got just the Starlight as it came out. And again, if you look at that, you can see that it is subtly better. It's not huge, but it has added a bit more little details in here. You'll notice it a bit more when we look at a couple of other examples. I do that because I think I get the best results with it. If I compare it to Starlight Sharp, sometimes Starlight Sharp comes out marginally better than doing Starlight plus Iris, and sometimes it doesn't. With these things, I yet to have a definitive answer of what's the best thing to use for every shot. It is something where a lot of the time I have to come through and I have to play with the settings and then do it, because I do get different settings for different types of video, I'm afraid. A piece of cine film might have a different setting, something like this. So now I've turned on the Starlight Sharp. This is Starlight Sharp on this side. This is Starlight with Iris on this side. So Starlight Sharp is living up to its name. Everything is a bit sharper, but possibly a bit blobbier. These faces are a bit more peculiar than those faces. None of them looking 100% right, but I do think the Starlight ones, for me, with this particular shot, probably got the edge. This is Starlight with Iris. If I just go back to regular Starlight, that's the just Starlight as it comes straight out. And I think that still works better if I put a little bit of Iris on it afterwards. But still, between the two, they're both very good. They're both better than that, which is what normal Iris does, or better than that, which is what Resolve does. And Resolve itself has actually got pretty good upscaling in it. So obviously it's showing you that Topaz is doing something better than everything else. So yeah, that's what you get by paying extra money, is you get these Starlight models. We'll look at a few more examples. One more thing you might notice just by looking down here at the timeline. Why does my Starlight start a couple of frames after the irises? Why isn't it the same length? I don't know why, but for some reason, the Starlight always misses a frame or two at the start, which can be an issue if you get it wrong when you're putting it on the timeline and it might mess up the lip sync. But it's annoying, Starlight does miss about a frame at the start, which is why I shuffled it across so that they're roughly at the same point. The end seems to be fine, it's the start, always misses the odd frame out. There are times when I use some of the other things that Topaz can do. So I mentioned this enhancement stuff, but Topaz down here has other things. So frame interpolation is slow motion. I was doing some editing for somebody and I wanted some shots, but they were not nearly long enough. I needed to put a shot in there. It needed to be about 5 seconds and the original was about half a second. And I popped it into here, did a bit of frame interpolation, slowed it down an awful lot, and I got an acceptable shot. This does really quite good slow motion. You've got this thing SDR to HDR, so the idea is it takes a standard image and changes it to an HDR image. I have to admit my results with that haven't been that brilliant. I don't tend to use that. Image stabilization, again, very good. I've got decent stabilization in my editing program, so there's a good one in Resolve, there's a good one in Edius, but this also does good stabilization. But this one I have used motion deblur. So in particular with this cinefilm stuff that I've been doing, typically a cinefilm is filmed at 18 or 24 frames a second and somebody will scan it for you. And then if you're lucky, they give you a file which is still at 18 frames a second. It's still at the original frame rate. But a lot of times you find if somebody scans it, they'll change it to 25 frames a second. And they'll do that by using some kind of fancy interpolation to change the thing and smooth out the join. You know, smooth out the fact that you've changed the frames and dragged them further apart. which is something like optical flow. It's a bit like doing slow motion. You know, when you slow something down, you have to invent some frames to make it look good. And a lot of times people will give you some cine film and they've already done that. Ideally, if you're going to upscale it like this, you want the original 18 frames a second that you can then pop through this and then slow it afterwards. But if they've already pre-slowed it down, I've sometimes found that the motion deblur actually helps to get back some of the, because it's already got sort of blurred together by the slow motion, and that will help deblur it and make it look nicer. Sometimes it makes it look a bit staccato, but sometimes it helps if you've got a lot of blurry footage. The nice thing about using Iris or Proteus or anything is you can add these in. So I could do a bit of motion deblur, I could stabilize it. You know, I could do all these kind of things and I could stack them up and have 3 or 4 different things stacked on it. If you start using Starlight, you can't do anything else. If I change this to Starlight, none of those are available. You have to Starlight it and then do other stuff to it. So anyway, how are we doing? Oh, we are nearly finished on the Starlight Sharp, and then we'll pop into doing a second Iris pass on the Starlight version of this. There we go, that took 15 minutes. Now, admittedly, I was busy popping around and doing other stuff in the program at the time, so it would have been a bit quicker if I left it on its own. You can see irising that, not taking any time at all. The Starlight stuff takes forever, but worth it. Let's have a quick look at these then. So I have got Starlight Mini. What Topaz always does is it keeps the original file name and then it adds something on the end to tell you what models you've used. So this has got Starlight Mini on it. That's the one that I already showed you. This one has got Starlight Mini with Iris on it. And then this one here, SLS. SLS is Starlight Sharp. So let's have a look at what Starlight Sharp did. And you can see Starlight Sharp has come out considerably sharper. Bit blobby, but it is considerably sharper. You know, I told it to be HD, it's come out at 1440 by 1080. I really wish they'd sort those sizes out so you know what you're doing. And which is better? My personal feeling is Starlight followed by Iris is probably better than that. But again, you've got to bear in mind what I started with. And that's why I started with something so awful, just to show you what these fancy models can do. Now, obviously, most of you won't be starting out with something that awful. You might instead be starting out with something from Hi8 or something from DV. So let's have a look at a couple of those. So for example, here is some Hi8. This is just some home video footage filmed on a, I believe, 8mm camera and then put onto DVD and then taken off DVD. This is my old home footage. I want to make it watchable. If I turn this on and let's just pop it into Iris again, let's pop it up to full HD, take it off automatic. Estimate it, improve the detail. I don't think it needs so much fixing and compression. Love the fact that with this frame preview on, I'm just getting a feedback straight away. I don't even have to wait for a 1-second preview to be made. Probably gone over the top. And yep, that's what a bit of Iris is going to be looking like. So let's try a bit of Proteus. Again, let's go half and half. Put it up to 100%. So you get the idea. Proteus is improving it, but I don't think it's improving it anything like Iris does. Let's try a bit of Rhea. Rhea, that's not bad, I suppose. But I still think I prefer the results with Iris. Now I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put it through Starlight and Starlight Sharp, and I'll show you the results. I'll also put my Starlight through a second pass of Iris and show you that too. Honestly, I'm not that worried about making this shot of a horse look realistic, but I'm using the same principles on other shots with people in who are maybe not around anymore or have just got a lot older. And I want to use it to tart up that old stuff. On the other hand, I can't show them in a YouTube video, so we get a horse. If you go to the start here, these buildings, typical handheld shot, it's not bad. Stick a bit of Iris on it, it gets better. By the way, I've got an adjustment layer on here to just adjust the brightness a bit. If I turn the adjustment layer off, the blacks just aren't quite as black and the whites just aren't quite as white. I always do a little bit of grading on stuff anyway. And I'm just putting an adjustment clip on the top so it's applied to each of these. They all get the same effect. There, that's what Iris looks like. Let's go here and then go and see what Starlight Sharp looks like. So Starlight Sharp is, well, it's sharper than Iris. And yeah, probably a bit better. Let's turn on this one, which is Starlight. Now again, to me, I think Starlight is probably the best of all of them. But if you just freeze that for a moment, the buildings, they've got a nice lot of definition in them. If I turn that off, you can see that Starlight Sharp is the same, but a bit blobbier. Iris, I do find it to be fairly similar to the way that Starlight Sharp is working, whereas regular Starlight just does it nicer and cleaner. If I pop along to our little horsey, so on this side we have the original, which has just been deinterlaced. As you can see, the horse is having a good scratch. On this side we have This one is Iris. So if I stop that for a second, you can see it's better because there's much more detail on the fur and so on. Let's put on Starlight Sharp. Suddenly you're getting an awful lot more fur. See that moving a bit? Again, not perfect, but actually considerably better than the original. And say Starlight Sharp there doing a better job than Iris did. And now I'll put on Starlight itself. It's again similar sort of look to Sharp, just a bit fuzzier. And then I'll stick on the Starlight with Iris. This is the one I say, which I think gives me the best results. You see these plants here actually look like plants as opposed to this on the original. The fur on the horse looks like fur. The ground, if I go back to Starlight Sharp, it's sharper, but the plants themselves, they're still a bit too much. It's almost like somebody's put a bit too much extra sharpness on it, if you ask me, with this particular shot. And of course you go back to Iris, it's suddenly looking a lot fuzzier. Still looking better than that. I mean, all these lines and everything else around all this stuff is cleaned up by Iris, but I do believe that if I pop onto Starlight here, it does a considerably better job. By the way, something black does keep flopping in front of it, but that's just part of the original shot. But looking at that, you can actually see hair. The detail that it's put on the hair there. The way that this barbed wire looks a lot better than this barbed wire, and it's got rid of all that echo around it. It doesn't look as good as it would if I'd filmed that on a decent modern camera. That's not going to happen. But it is looking considerably better than it did before. Let's go to an outside shot. I mean, look at that. That's the blobby mess from the original. That's what's using Starlight and Iris has done. This is Starlight on its own, which again is pretty good but a bit fuzzier. This is Starlight Sharp. I don't think that's quite as good as Starlight with Iris. And this one here is Iris. So again, Iris is better than that. It's done a better job than that, but honestly, it's not as good as that. And that's what you get by spending the extra money and spending the extra time doing the processing. So here we have a shot of me that was filmed on DV. So this footage is getting progressively better. And what you can see here is this the DV original. Now that is deinterlaced. This is deinterlaced using QTMGC. If I turn that off, you'll now see this is deinterlaced using the neural engine inside of Resolve. It's a bit noisier. It's not quite as good. That's why I prefer QTMGC. But actually, DaVinci is not bad. DaVinci Studio does actually very good deinterlacing, although I do prefer the QTMGC one. But anyway, well, I'm really here to compare the standard definition to the upscaled varieties. So this one here is Iris. Look at these quaint old computer screens. This, by the way, is filmed in 2002. So quite a long time ago, but I might still have that shirt. But anyway, that's 2002. I'm talking about these fancy new things that are invented called DVDs. No longer will we be putting stuff back to tape. They were going to DVD. That's how long ago this is. Anyway. That's the original deinterlaced. That is Iris. Iris is already pretty good. It's cleaned everything up. It's got rid of a lot of the noise. And you can see, yes, it's already better than that. Iris already, I thought, was doing a better job than most other upscaling programs. Now for this comparison, I haven't actually done a Starlight Sharp version. At the moment, I still think that Starlight Mini and maybe Starlight Mini with Iris is coming out better than Starlight Sharp. But if I turn on the Starlight, so remember this is Iris, this is the original. This is Starlight. So you can see Starlight itself is a little bit fuzzy in some places, particularly around the eyes there. But comparing that to Iris, Iris is a little bit sharper, although Iris has still got a little bit of a halo around things, whereas Starlight doesn't. And that's where, again, I find, take that, so it's already been Starlighted, take that and then put a bit of Iris on the result. So it's processed a second time, and you end up with something which is nice and sharp, but it doesn't have lots of halo around it. And I do prefer that, the Iris look. I mean, it's close, but particularly look at the edges and the shirt and everything else. The Iris one is sharper. When I'm getting to footage of this kind of quality, Iris actually, I mean, Iris does do a very good job. I still think Starlight does a better job. It ends up with something that's a little bit more realistic, especially if I stick a bit of Iris on afterwards. There's still bits of this that are wrong. This old, what's this, Premiere 1 on screen back here. The words on the monitor obviously weren't that. The keyboard down here, these obviously aren't exactly what they were at the time. But for me, Starlight plus a bit of Iris does the best job. Starlight Sharp, which is the other one that you have to get the Pro license for, I'm not so sure about at the moment, but then it is very new. It was originally introduced in a beta version, which I was playing with before it came out, and I think it's better than it is right now. I've done all my Starlight sharping for this video inside of Topaz Video 1, and I think it was slightly better in the betas. That might improve over the next couple of months, and it might get to the stage where Starlight Sharp is better than the Starlight Iris combination. For me at the moment, that's my favourite combination because I think it gives me nicer upscaled results, but without it being like something that's been thoroughly over sharpened. You know, if I was upscaling DV, I wouldn't be unhappy with doing it with Iris. In fact, I was very happy with Iris until Starlight came along. So here, this is the one that I've done with Starlight and then Irised it afterwards. This is just Iris, so you can see the two directly. You can probably see what I mean about the edges being nicer in this one, but they are pretty close. Nothing to mention about Starlight Sharp. Starlight itself needs a very good graphics card. Starlight Sharp is even more picky. If I try and run it on this system, it'll pop up with this. So I've installed Topaz, I've been using Topaz, but I've never actually used Starlight Sharp. And the very first time you choose it, it'll pop up with this. It does the same if you choose regular Starlight. It wants to run a system check. So I'm going to do that. It's going to look at my system. This isn't the main Topazing system I use. This is my main editing system, which has a 3060 graphics card in it with 12 gig of memory. And you'll notice Starlight Sharp says, sorry, it won't work. Your graphics card has to have at least 16 gigabytes of RAM on it to use Starlight Sharp. I can use Starlight on this system. So I pop into Starlight here and that will work. Now it runs faster on my 5060 Ti on this, but it still works on here. But I can't use Starlight Sharp because the graphics card isn't good enough. And this was a very good graphics card when I bought it. A lot of your graphics card, even if you only bought them a year ago, might not have 16 gigabytes of RAM. And if you don't have 16 gigabytes RAM, you literally cannot run Starlight Sharp. But that's another important thing, graphics cards. My other system is kind of the minimum for running this. It has 16 gig of RAM. Ideally, I'd want one with 24 or 48, which you can get if you buy a much more expensive graphics card. Now, if you don't like tying up your machine, you can always send it off to the cloud. And let me choose Starlight and let's make this into HD. And I can click the button and start it exporting, or I could send it off to the cloud. So if you click on that, it will take your file, upload it to the Tinterweb, do all the processing on their own fancy machines, and then send it back to you. Which is great because you don't have to tie it on your machine doing it, but they do charge you. You get a certain number of credits given to you, which is what's shown up here. When you actually start exporting up to the cloud, it will take those credits and it will use them up based on how long your video is. So the longer the video, the more credits it will take, the more it's going to cost you. Even though I've got the Pro version where I can do it on my own machine, if I send it up to the cloud, it's going to cost me dosh. One of the things they say about the studio version of Topaz, and the studio version is the one where you get video plus photos and all the other stuff, is you get unlimited cloud rendering. It's unlimited cloud rendering of photographs, not unlimited cloud rendering of video. So no use for video, basically. For video, they're going to charge you. Which honestly is quite sensible. I could upload 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine to their servers if they weren't charging me anything for it and get back nice high quality ones. And obviously they're not going to allow you to do that. And they only let you do them one at a time. You can't batch encode them. You can't send them 7,000 pictures to be done at once. With pictures, you're only going to be able to do so many. They can afford to let you do that for nothing. But with video, you can't. If you rent the non-pro version of Topaz and you want to use Starlight, you can use it, but only through the cloud, which means you have to pay for every minute that you do. That's why you pay more for the pro one, so you can actually use it on your local machine. And obviously the other question, why not just use something else? There are loads of AI upscaling programs out there. I have tried quite a few, and Topaz beats the pants off them. Topaz with Iris beats the pants off them. Topaz with Starlight is even better, and I haven't found anything that's comparable yet. Now, I probably haven't tried all of them, but I haven't found anything that's comparable. The one thing that I am looking at trying is a thing called Comfy UI. You pop onto this website and you download it. This is a free AI program. UI, as everybody should know, stands for user interface. It's basically an interface that lets you use a lot of AI stuff. So it doesn't let you just do upscaling, it lets you do all sorts of other stuff. Again, it really wants a very nice graphics card. So if you haven't got a good graphics card, don't even think about using it. And I have seen people saying they've got brilliant results with this, which they say are comparable to Starlight. So I've installed it, tried using it, and I haven't got anywhere yet. The thing about free stuff is there's no guarantee that it's going to work. When you pay for something, they have to make it work. If it's free stuff, they say, this is how you're supposed to use it. You can see videos on the interweb about it. You can look at all sorts of different pages. But if you get stuck on something, you have to work it out. Where I like using free software wherever I can, and I have got stuck sometimes. Doesn't mean all paid software always works. That quite clearly is not true either. But if you use Comfy UI, you can actually do an awful lot of stuff. And one of them is upscaling. There's a thing called Seed VR2, which is a way of upscaling, and there was even some threads about it on the Topaz forum, so I started following those. I downloaded some settings, and I popped it into Comfy UI, and I ended up with this. And currently I've got this big red node here that I can't work out how to make it work. And that's the sort of thing that happens with free stuff. Sometimes you end up going down a bit of a rabbit hole. I had the same thing when I used another front end called Pinocchio to do some colorization. It took me ages to get the colorization working. When I got the colorization working on this totally free program, I found out that yes, it was actually as good as I was getting with the paid programs that I was using. Because the paid programs were just using the same models, they just put a nice front end on it to make it usable. So it's entirely possible that if I get Comfy UI working, I will get as good as results as I do with Starlight for nothing. But I'm going to have to go through a few hoops first. That, at the moment, is the only prospect that I've got of anything that's anything close to Topaz. All the other stuff I've tried has been a pain in the butt. I take footage off my phone. Now, my phone's pretty good. My phone does pretty good video, but it's a phone. I can run it through the AI and it will look a lot better. I am primarily using it to take old footage and then make it look good enough for me to show that. And I want to put all my old home footage through it so I can have better looking home footage. Stuff that I simply can't go back and do again. And again, I found that for me, Topaz definitely the best at doing the job. You will need a good graphics card. The good graphics card is the most important thing. I mean, you'll need a pretty good processor, but like I said, my Topazing system is a 9th generation processor. So we're talking about a processor which must be about 6 years old, 32 gig of RAM. It's not the most up-to-date thing, but it works. And it's because I put a good graphics card in there, which is this 5060 Ti. And if I could have afforded it, I would have put a 5090 in there, because a 5090 will probably go twice as fast as my 5060. I have got access to another system that I do some work on for a customer by remote control. He's got a 4090 in there. The 4090 cost him £2,000. You had to have really good cooling in the system because they get very hot. It had to have a 1000-watt power supply. But again, that is seriously faster than my 5060 Ti. Still means that if we want to process an hour's worth of stuff, we have to wait a couple of days to do it in Starlight, but it is seriously faster than an hour would take on my 5060 Ti. Another thing I did mention in a previous video was that the fact that Topaz takes so long means that sometimes when I'm choosing how to encode it, I do not make it as a ProRes MOV file. So the moment I put this in, this is 6 minutes. It says here it's going to take 49 minutes. But if I was putting an hour through here, 6 minutes is taking me, say, an hour. An hour is going to take possibly a day to do. Depends on what the settings are and everything else, but an hour would take a lot longer. That's when I would come in here and I would change it from doing a video to an image sequence. And I would probably use a TIFF, and I'd probably use a 16-bit TIFF. There's lots of different images here, but JPEGs are compressed, so there's always a possibility of artifacts. I would either use a TIFF or a PNG, and I've personally found TIFFs get on better with most editing programs. That's going to create the whole thing as a series of still images on the timeline. But the one thing I like about that is that if something happens halfway through the processing, you accidentally kick the power out of your computer, you have a power cut, the computer goes wrong for some reason. If you're making a ProRes file and that's not finished properly, it will not work. If you make a bunch of TIFFs, all the TIFFs made up to that point will still exist. So you only have to start it again from the bit you got to. So if I'm doing something really long, I'll do that. It is a bit of a pain because they take up a hell of a lot of space, so you need a lot of space on your hard drive so that you've actually got the space for these things. And then you've got to take it into an editing program, and then you've got to stitch them all together, and then you've got to make a new AVI file, and then you've got to put the sound onto it. So it is pain in that respect. I have had jobs go wrong when it's doing the last 10 seconds of the video for some reason. Normally some kind of computer problem. Can you imagine it's been going for a day and then the machine goes wrong and you can't use it? The other thing I have found actually is to do with MOVs. If I make an hour MOV, and I'm making, say, a 4K hour MOV, so that's going to be quite a big, large file and quite long, Windows doesn't seem to like MOVs that aren't quite finished properly. So if something goes wrong halfway through the encoding process and you end up with a MOV on the hard drive which isn't finished properly, it really gums up Windows. It would take me ages just to go into the folder and select it and delete it. And when I mean ages, we're talking minutes of waiting around, and hopefully you'll eventually get into the folder, be able to select it and delete it. You certainly can't use it. You can't rescue it in any other way. So that's another thing that has scuppered me with this, because I have had failures. I have had it go wrong halfway through for all sorts of things. And you'll end up with a MOV sitting in here. And instead of having the name after the end of it, it'll have a bunch of numbers. And it'll be something that just doesn't play back. And like I said, it would just literally going into that folder would take forever until I can delete the flipping file. So another thing I do, if I am going to do an hour and I don't want to do it as TIFFs, I will split it up into chunks, maybe 10-minute chunks. So I'd come in here, I would put it a time, I'd then mark an out point, I'd then move on one frame, so make sure it goes to there, mark that as an in point, then mark another out point a bit later on, and I'd do it in small chunks. So I'd mark that out, put some settings, add it. Mark it in and out, put that there and add it. And I'd do it in smaller chunks. I wouldn't try and do an hour's worth of MOV file in something like Starlight. Actually, something like Iris, because this actually first happened to me when I had Iris. I was doing something and it was going from HD to 4K in Iris, and it got nearly all the way through and then went wrong, and I just couldn't even get rid of the temporary file. And it's not a Topaz thing, it's a Windows thing, because when I loaded up the same directory into Linux, I could delete it very easily. Windows wouldn't let me get into there and even delete the flipping thing. So anyway, I hope that's been a helpful little summary of the latest stuff that's gone on with Topaz Video. Shame it's got up in price, shame it's now rental, but I still think it's the best thing that I've got for upscaling. In my next video, I'm probably going to look at the new stuff that's going to be in EDIUS 11, because there was a new version that was announced at IBC. It's supposed to be coming out any minute, so I'll do a new video on that. It'll be out in a few weeks' time. And then after that, a large job with an awful lot of compositing inside of Resolve, especially using Fusion, so I'll probably do a few videos about that for you. Hope you found this video useful. Obviously, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, all that usual stuff. Please let me know if you've got any questions in the comments. I happen to be going on holiday for a couple of weeks after I finish this video, so I might not reply to them straight away, but I'll get back to you eventually. Don't forget to go to my website, www.dvctraining.co.uk, for more information about what I do. But I hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you next time.